1 week later, Zara stood before a joint assembly of Earth representatives and alien diplomats. The large hall was filled with tension. On one side sat human leaders, many still processing the revelation about their own species. On the other side, representatives from 24 alien civilizations watched with expressions ranging from fear to curiosity. Zara had made her choice. "My name is Zora Vex," she began, her voice steady despite her nervousness. "Until recently, I was a xenoanthropologist with the Arcturian Collective. I came to Earth to study human mythology as primitive psychology. I was wrong." She activated a holographic display showing ancient symbols from Earth, Arcturus, and a dozen other worlds. These symbols appear across the galaxy on different worlds. I once believed this was convergent cultural evolution, different species creating similar myths due to similar psychological needs. Now I understand they are fragments of a memory so old it survived only in our most ancient stories. Images appeared of shadow beings with stars inside them, drawn by prehistoric humans, carved by ancient Arcturians, painted by species from distant stars. "Humanity is not what we thought," Zora continued. "Humans are both themselves and vessels for entities that have guided evolution across multiple galaxies. Earth was not their birthplace, but their hiding place, a sanctuary established eons ago during a cosmic conflict." Murmurs spread through the alien representatives. A diplomat from the Ceti Alliance stood. "If what you say is true, humans are not a natural species, but something else entirely. Something potentially dangerous to all of us. We pose no threat to peaceful worlds," Jack Monroe said, stepping forward to stand beside Zora. He had become Earth's unofficial ambassador during this crisis. "We hid our true nature because we had to. Because what hunted us long ago will hunt us again." "And what exactly hunted you?" asked another diplomat. Jack's expression darkened. "We call them the Void. They consume light, life, and consciousness itself. They exist in the spaces between reality, and they have begun to stir again." Zara activated another display, showing recent astronomical data. Strange phenomena have been detected at the edges of explored space. Stars going dark, planets losing their electromagnetic fields. The signs match ancient accounts of the Void's return. The room erupted in fearful discussion. Zara waited for the noise to subside before continuing. "I stand before you as neither fully Arcturian nor human in allegiance. I represent the truth, however uncomfortable. Humanity's awakening is not a threat. It may be our only hope against what comes." In the days that followed, the galaxy divided. Some species severed ties with Earth, retreating behind their borders in fear. Others formed new alliances with humanity, recognizing the ancient power that had reawakened. Zara's own people remained distant, treating her as a traitor to their cause. As for Zara herself, she found a new purpose. Neither fully accepted by her birth people nor fully trusted by humans, she became an essential bridge between worlds. Her research facility became the center for a new kind of xenoanthropology, one that studied not just myths, but the truth behind them. One evening, as she worked late in her new laboratory, Jack visited her. The shadow parts of him were more visible now that he no longer needed to hide his nature. "The first Void incursion has been detected in the Cygnus sector," he told her grimly. "It's beginning." Zara nodded, feeling strangely calm. "Then we'll face it together. Are you ready for what comes next?" Jack asked. "No," Zora admitted with a small smile. "But I'm ready to learn." She turned to her window, where Earth's moon hung bright in the night sky. Across its surface, humans were building new structures, not simple bases as other species might create, but elegant spires that seemed to be made partly of shadow and starlight. Earth was transforming as humanity embraced its dual nature. "You once mocked our myths," Jack said softly. "Now I help write the next chapter," Zora finished. Outside her window, stars gleamed in the darkness. Some might soon go dark as the Void advanced, but others burned brighter than before, as ancient powers awakened across the galaxy. Zara no longer feared the shadows. She had seen what stepped out from them. And though the coming conflict might reshape the universe itself, she faced it with the curiosity that had always defined her, not as an Arcturian scientist studying primitive myths, but as a witness to a truth older than stars themselves. 3 days after the attack, Zara stood before the emergency communication screen, facing the Arcturian High Council. Their 12 stern faces showed a mix of fear and anger. "Researcher Vex, you will return home immediately," said High Counselor Drev. "Your expertise on the human threat is needed." "The humans defended themselves against our unprovoked attack," Zara replied carefully. "They showed remarkable restraint. They could have destroyed our ships but chose to disable them instead." "You have been compromised," another counselor accused. "These creatures have influenced your mind." "I have seen the truth," Zara corrected. "What the humans are. It changes everything we thought we knew about the universe." The counselors exchanged troubled glances. "What exactly are they, Researcher Vex?" Zara hesitated. How could she explain what she had witnessed? "They are vessels for ancient entities, beings that existed before our civilization evolved. They'd been hiding on Earth, living as humans." "All the more reason to neutralize the threat," Drev said coldly. "You don't understand," Zara insisted. "They aren't the threat. They're hiding from something else, something that hunted them across the stars long ago." The council chamber fell silent. Finally, Drev spoke again. "You have 2 options, Researcher Vex. Return home with appropriate memory adjustments to remove this contamination, or face charges of treason against the collective." The communication ended abruptly. Zara stood there, staring at the blank screen. She had expected this reaction, but it still hurt. Her entire career, her life's work, her place in Arcturian society, all of it hung in the balance. "They didn't take it well, I assume," Jack said, entering the room. Zara turned to face him. He looked tired but fully human again. No hint of the shadow being remained visible. "They want me to return home. They'll erase my memories of what I've learned here." Jack nodded grimly. "That's how fear works. When the truth is too big, too challenging, people try to contain it, erase it." "What choice do I have?" Zara asked, her voice small. "You always have a choice," Jack said. He gestured for her to follow him. They walked through the facility, passing humans and transformed beings working side by side to repair damage from the attack. Some nodded respectfully to Jack as he passed. He led her to a small, quiet room with a window that somehow showed the night sky, despite being underground. The stars looked different from this perspective, more alive somehow, as if each one pulsed with its own heartbeat. "Your people once knew what we are," Jack said softly. "All sentient species did. Some chose to forget. Some chose to mock. Some chose to remember and wait." "Wait for what?" Zara asked. "For the inevitable return of those who hunted us, the ones we fled from eons ago." Jack turned to face her directly. "Zara, I'm offering you a choice. Return home with modified memories and salvage your career. You can tell your people what they want to hear, that humans are just another species with unusual defenses." He paused. "Or stay. Learn the truth about not just humanity, but the universe itself. Help us prepare for what's coming." "Why me?" Zara asked. "I mocked your myths. I dismissed your existence as primitive psychology." Jack smiled. "Because you sought the truth, even when it challenged everything you believed. Because you have the courage to question your own certainties." Zora looked out at the stars again. One of them was her homeworld. Her family, friends, and colleagues were there, living in comfortable ignorance of the vast cosmic drama unfolding around them. "If I stay, I'll be branded a traitor," she said quietly. "Yes," Jack admitted, "but you'll know the truth. And if what hunted you returns, what happens then?" Jack's expression grew serious. "Then every world, including yours, will need to choose sides in a war older than time itself." Zora closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Her entire identity had been built around scientific certainty, around dismissing primitive myths as psychological coping mechanisms. Now those very myths had come alive around her, revealing a universe far stranger and more dangerous than she had ever imagined. "I need to think," she said finally. Jack nodded. "Of course, but don't take too long. Events are accelerating. The revealing of our true nature has set things in motion that cannot be stopped." He left her alone with the stars and her thoughts as diplomatic relations between Earth and the Arcturian collective continued to deteriorate. Zara had been at the underground facility for 2 days, trying to process everything she had learned, when the alarms began to sound. Red lights flashed throughout Sanctuary 7 as personnel rushed to monitoring stations. "What's happening?" she asked, finding Jack in the main control room. His face was grim. "We've got incoming. Your people have made a move." On the large screens around them, satellite images showed Arcturian ships entering Earth's atmosphere, not the diplomatic vessels that had brought Zora's team, but military craft designed for combat. "This isn't authorized," Zora said, stunned. The collective wouldn't attack without confirming their suspicions. Jack finished for her. "They've suspected what humanity really is for some time. Your research trip was partly a cover for deeper surveillance." Ellie burst into the room, her uniform disheveled, as if she dressed in a hurry. "They're targeting major cities. New York, London, Tokyo. Energy weapons powering up." "How did they find out?" Zara asked, guilt washing over her. Had her research somehow triggered this? "We've had a leak in the diplomatic corps," Jack explained. "A faction in your government fears what humanity represents. They believe a preemptive strike is their only option." On the screens, the first energy blasts hit Earth's atmosphere, meeting resistance from previously hidden defense systems. Shields of shimmering energy appeared above the targeted cities, absorbing the attacks. "Evacuation protocols are active," Ellie reported. "Civilians are being moved to safety zones." Jack turned to Zora. "We need to show them they can't win this fight. Not against what we really are." Before Zora could respond, Jack stepped back and closed his eyes. Like Ellie had demonstrated earlier, his form began to change. He stepped into a shadow cast by the equipment and vanished completely. "Where did he go?" Zora asked. Ellie's expression was calm despite the chaos around them. "To do what we've avoided doing for millennia. To reveal our true nature." On the monitors, impossible images began appearing from around the world. In New York, shadows peeled away from buildings, forming massive figures that intercepted Arcturian energy beams. In London, humans transformed in the streets, their bodies becoming vessels for beings of darkness and starlight. In Tokyo, a woman jumped from a skyscraper to save a child. And instead of falling, she flew, trailing cosmic dust behind her. "My people don't understand what they're attacking," Zora whispered. "Few do," Ellie replied. "We've hidden for so long, many of us forgot what we are. The human form isn't just a disguise. It's become part of us. But the old power remains." The facility shook as an explosion hit somewhere above them. Damage reports flooded the communication systems. "They found us," Ellie said. "This facility was supposed to be undetectable." Security footage showed Arcturian special forces breaching the upper levels. They moved with military precision, using technology designed to counter human weapons. "They'll kill everyone," Zora said, recognizing the weapons her people carried. "No," Ellie said with strange certainty. "They won't." As the Arcturian soldiers reached the main chamber, the lights went out completely. In the darkness, Zara heard screams of surprise and fear from her people. When emergency lighting activated seconds later, the soldiers were still there, but frozen in place, surrounded by living shadows. Jack stood among them, partly human and partly something else. Around him, other staff members of the facility had also transformed, their eyes shining with starlight, their bodies partially merged with darkness. "We have contained the immediate threat," Jack announced, his voice resonating oddly. "The ships above have been disabled without casualties." On the monitors, Zora watched Arcturian vessels hanging motionless in the sky, enveloped in fields of shadow. "What happens now?" she asked, looking at the frozen soldiers. "Now the truth comes out," Jack said, returning fully to human form as the shadows receded. "We can't hide anymore. For better or worse, humanity will have to acknowledge what it truly is." He looked at Zara with unexpected compassion. "And your people will have to decide where they stand and what comes next." Zara stared at the monitor showing her homeworld, visible as a distant point of light. "What exactly is coming next?" Jack's expression darkened. "War, possibly. The same war we fled eons ago." Zara sat alone in her research office, surrounded by holographic displays showing ancient texts. For 3 days since the cave incident, she had barely slept. Her team had found her wandering out of the cave system, unable to explain how she had escaped the rockslide. Medical scans showed she was physically fine, but Zara knew something had changed within her. Now she searched desperately through historical records, breaking into classified Earth databases that were supposed to be off-limits to alien visitors. She was looking for patterns, events throughout human history that couldn't be explained. Cross-reference unexplained phenomena with witness accounts of shadow figures. She instructed her computer. The system displayed hundreds of results, spanning thousands of years. A Roman legion saved from ambush by a darkness that swallowed their enemies. Medieval accounts of star-filled shadows that guided lost children home. Modern military reports of impossible rescues during disasters. Zara's hands trembled slightly as she opened another file, this one from her own people's archives. Ancient Arcturian texts spoke of those who dwell between stars and guardians from the void light. She had always dismissed these as pre-scientific nonsense, the same way she had mocked human myths. "You won't find all the answers in there." Zora spun around. Jack Monroe stood in her doorway, the human from the diplomatic reception, and the sender of the warning message she had ignored. "How did you get in here?" "This area is secured," Zora demanded, rising from her seat. "The same way I get anywhere," Jack replied, stepping inside and closing the door. "I have access to places most don't." He gestured to her screens, finding interesting connections. "You know something about what happened in that cave," Zora said. It wasn't a question. Jack nodded. "I know what you saw. What spoke to you?" "What was it?" Zara asked, her scientific detachment crumbling. "Some kind of energy being. Advanced technology." "Those would be comfortable explanations, wouldn't they?" Jack smiled. "But you already know it's not that simple. Your people once understood, just as mine did." Zara sank back into her chair. "Tell me." "Not here." Jack held out his hand. "Some things can't be explained. They need to be shown." Against her better judgment, Zara took his hand. The world around them seemed to blur, colors and shapes melting into darkness. She felt a sensation of movement, though they hadn't physically taken a step. When her vision cleared, they stood in a vast underground facility. Sleek technology lined the walls, more advanced than anything she had seen on Earth, or even back home. "Welcome to Sanctuary 7, Jack said. "One of several facilities around your planet that don't officially exist." A human woman approached them. She wore a simple gray uniform with no insignia. "You brought her," she said to Jack. "Good." "Zara, this is Ellie Winters," Jack introduced them. "She can help explain what you're experiencing." "You're not just humans, are you?" Zara asked, looking between them. Ellie smiled. "We are human. That's the part you've misunderstood." She led Zara to a circular platform in the center of the room. As they stepped onto it, a holographic display activated, showing the galaxy from above. "Humanity isn't what evolved on Earth," Ellie explained, waving her hand to zoom in on various star systems. "Humanity is what was hidden on Earth." "I don't understand," Zara said. "Watch," Ellie replied. The woman closed her eyes. The air around her shimmered, and her form seemed to blur at the edges. Then, slowly, darkness began to gather around her, not threatening, but deep and somehow alive. Within the darkness, points of light twinkled like distant stars. Part of Ellie remained human, but part of her had transformed into something like the entity from the cave. When she opened her eyes, they shone with inner light. "This is what humanity truly is," Jack said softly beside Zara. "Not just flesh and blood, but vessels for something much older. Something that existed long before Earth was formed." Zara stared, her 3 hearts pounding in her chest. Her entire understanding of the universe was unraveling before her eyes. But why? She managed to ask. Why hide on Earth? Why pretend to be just another evolved species? "Protection," Ellie answered, her voice now layered with harmonics that made Zora's skin tingle. "And preparation, both of which are now coming to an end." The red rocks of the American Southwest rose around Zora like ancient guardians. Heat waves shimmered above the dusty ground as she led her research team toward a cave system that local tribes had once considered sacred. "Our scanners are picking up unusual mineral compositions," Maris said, checking her handheld device. The green-skinned cynobiologist had been excited about this expedition since they'd heard about the caves from Sam Mitchell. "Probably just iron deposits," Zora replied. She'd agreed to this trip reluctantly. After the strange incidents at her lab, she'd thrown herself into fieldwork, hoping data collection would distract from the growing unease she refused to acknowledge. Krell adjusted his cooling suit. The humans at the university said these caves contain wall paintings over 10,000 years old. Some symbols match those found on other continents from the same time period. "Coincidence or cultural transmission," Zara said automatically. "Nothing supernatural." The entrance to the cave system was a dark slash in the red rock face. As they approached, Zara noticed the temperature dropping dramatically, far more than could be explained by simple shade. "That's odd," Maris murmured, checking her readings. "The temperature is 15 degrees cooler than it should be." "And our scanner range is decreasing," Krell added, tapping his device. "I'm losing signal strength." Zara frowned. "Check your equipment. This is basic geological interference." But inside the cave, the interference grew worse. Their advanced Arcturian technology, capable of functioning in deep space and alien atmospheres, began failing. Lights flickered, scanners showed contradictory readings, and their communication system with the surface team cut in and out. "This doesn't make sense," Zora muttered, examining the cave walls. Ancient paintings covered the stone surface. Figures with stars around their heads, humanoid shapes emerging from shadow forms, symbols that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. "These paintings," Maris started, then stopped, looking confused. "I feel like they're watching us." "Don't be ridiculous," Zara snapped, though she'd had the same unsettling impression. They ventured deeper into the cave system. The passages twisted in ways that defied the mapping program they'd created. Twice they found themselves returning to the same chamber despite moving in what should have been a straight line away from it. "Time check," Zara ordered, suddenly aware that her sense of time felt distorted. Krell checked his device. "That can't be right. According to this, we've been in here for 6 hours." "It's been 2 hours at most," Zara said, checking her own timepiece. It also showed 6 hours had passed. "This is some kind of electromagnetic anomaly affecting our equipment." As they debated what to do, a low rumble echoed through the cave. The ground trembled. Small stones fell from the ceiling. "Earthquake," Maris called out as larger rocks began to fall. The 3 researchers turned to retrace their steps, but a massive rockslide crashed down, cutting off their return path. Zara was thrown forward by the force, separated from Krell and Maris by a new wall of fallen stone. "Krell, Maris," she shouted, coughing in the dust cloud. "Can you hear me?" Faint voices responded, but the rock barrier was too thick to break through. "We'll find another way around." Krell's muffled voice called, "Stay where you are." But as the dust settled, Zara realized she was in serious trouble. Her light was damaged, casting only a dim glow in the darkness. The rock slide had left her in a small pocket with no visible exit. The air felt thinner already. She tried to stay calm, examining the rock wall for any weakness. Her Arcturian strength was greater than a human's, but not enough to move these massive boulders. Without functioning equipment, she couldn't scan for alternate routes. That's when she noticed it, a darkness deeper than the shadows around her. A patch of blackness that seemed to absorb what little light remained. As she watched, the darkness moved. It flowed like liquid, stretching and reshaping itself. Within it, pinpoints of light appeared, tiny stars in a void. The shadow condensed, forming a vaguely humanoid shape. Zara pressed herself against the wall, her scientific mind struggling to explain what she was seeing. The figure reached toward the fallen rocks. Its hand, if it could be called that, passed through solid stone, as if it were mist. The massive boulders began to shift, silently rising and moving aside, creating a passage where none had existed. A voice spoke directly into Zara's mind. "We were here before your ancestors learned to breathe vacuum, child of Arcturus." Then the shadow was gone, leaving only a perfectly formed tunnel through the rockslide. The university auditorium was filled with both humans and visiting aliens. Zara stood confidently at the podium, her presentation on human mythology projected on the large screen behind her. In conclusion, she said, displaying a chart comparing fear responses across species, human myths about protector entities, gods, angels, guardians, clearly reflect their species' deep insecurities. As one of the physically weaker intelligent species, humans created powerful imaginary allies to feel safe in a threatening world. A human raised his hand. But what about the consistent themes across isolated cultures? Couldn't that suggest some shared experience rather than just psychology? Convergent evolution of ideas, Zara answered smoothly. Just as eyes evolved independently in different species, so too did similar myths arise from similar psychological needs. She gestured to an image of ancient guardian figures from different cultures. These aren't evidence of actual entities. They're evidence of a species seeking comfort through imagination. After fielding a few more questions, Zora ended her lecture. Several attendees approached with follow-up questions, including Sam Mitchell, the curator from the local museum who had loaned her ancient artifacts for her research. "Interesting perspective, Dr. Vex," Sam said. He was a tall human with graying hair and glasses. "Though I wonder if you're being too dismissive of human experience." "I respect the data, Mr. Mitchell," Zara replied. "And the data shows myth creation correlates with periods of stress and uncertainty in developing species." Sam smiled politely. "Perhaps. But in my years working with ancient artifacts, I've encountered things that don't fit neatly into scientific categories." "Such as?" Zara asked, her tone making clear her skepticism. "Objects that affect electromagnetic fields when certain symbols are activated. Stone carvings that maintain temperatures different from their surroundings." Sam shrugged. "Small anomalies, but consistent ones." "Undiscovered properties of materials," Zora suggested. "Not evidence of supernatural forces." Sam nodded. "Maybe so. Still, I hope you'll keep an open mind during your research." Later that evening, Zara returned to her quarters feeling satisfied with her presentation. The lecture had been recorded and would be shared with the Arcturian Science Academy. Her analysis of human mythology would reinforce her reputation as a leading xenoanthropologist. She activated the lights in her room and stopped abruptly. On her viewing screen, which should have been blank, were symbols, ancient human symbols she had just displayed during her lecture. They appeared to be etched into the screen itself, glowing faintly. Zora approached cautiously, examining the markings. They were perfect replicas of protection symbols from ancient Egypt, Native American tribes, and prehistoric European cave drawings, the very symbols she had mocked hours earlier. She touched the screen. The surface was smooth. These weren't physical markings, but something within the display itself. She ran a diagnostic scan, which showed no malfunctions or unauthorized access. "Computer, show access log for this terminal," she commanded. "No access recorded since 8:43 hours, the system replied. Zara took images of the symbols, then reset the display. The markings vanished, but her unease remained. She contacted Krell and Maris via communicator. "Have either of you experienced equipment malfunctions?" she asked without explanation. "Nothing unusual," Krell answered. "Why do you ask?" "Just checking system integrity," Zara said, unwilling to admit what she'd seen. After disconnecting, she received an encrypted message on her personal device. The sender was unlisted, but the message opened automatically. "Some myths exist for a reason. Some shadows have substance. I suggest you tread more carefully." Zara recognized the name at the end. Jack Monroe, the human from the diplomatic reception, whom she hadn't seen since their first meeting. She immediately tried to trace the message's origin, but her system showed it came from nowhere. Literally. According to the data, the message had no point of origin, no transmission path, and no digital footprint. "Primitive intimidation tactics," she muttered, deleting the message. She refused to be frightened by cheap tricks and coincidences. Someone, probably a human offended by her lecture, was playing games. But that night, as she tried to sleep, Zara found herself listening for movements in the shadows of her room. For the first time since arriving on Earth, she kept the lights on until morning. 3 weeks after the diplomatic reception, Zara settled into her new research base at Westlake University. The humans had provided her team with a building on the edge of campus, retrofitted with Arcturian technology for their comfort. The small university town was ideal for cultural observation, large enough to provide data but small enough to control variables. Zara stood at the window, watching raindrops slide down the glass. Earth weather was unpredictable compared to the climate-controlled environments of Arcturus. She found it inefficient but oddly fascinating. "The equipment is finely calibrated," said Krell, her research assistant. The blue-skinned male was more diplomatic than Zara, always smiling at the humans who assisted them. "Good. We can begin formal interviews tomorrow," Zara replied, turning from the window. "Have the human subjects been screened?" "Yes." Maris handled the selection. Krell hesitated. "She thinks we should include Professor Harding from the folklore department." Zara's ridged brows lifted. "A folklore professor? This is scientific research, not story time." Maris believes Professor Harding could provide context for human myth structures. "Isn't that what your research focuses on?" Zara tapped her fingers against her desk. "Fine. Include this professor, but make it clear we're studying mythology as a psychological phenomenon, not validating folk tales." The next morning, Zara met Olivia Harding in the interview chamber. The human female was younger than Zara expected, with dark skin and curly hair pulled back neatly. She carried a worn leather bag filled with books and papers. "Dr. Vex, it's an honor," Professor Harding said, extending her hand. Zara briefly touched the professor's hand, still uncomfortable with human contact customs. "Please sit. My understanding is that you study human myths professionally." "I do. I specialize in comparative mythology across human cultures," Olivia explained. "I understand you've done similar work across different species." "I study the psychological evolution of sentient beings through their mythological constructs," Zara corrected. "Myths reveal primitive thought patterns before scientific understanding." Olivia smiled. "That's one perspective, though many would argue myths contain truths that science hasn't yet explained." "A common fallacy," Zara said, activating her recording device. "Let's begin with basic questions. Why do you believe humans created so many myths about powerful beings living among them?" "That's a cross-cultural pattern," Olivia replied thoughtfully. "Almost every human civilization has stories of gods, angels, or heroes walking disguised among ordinary people. The Greek god Zeus appeared as a human. Native American trickster gods took human form, and Norse legends tell of Thor traveling in disguise. And the psychological purpose of these stories. Purpose. Olivia seems surprised by the question. Some might say these stories exist because such beings actually walked among us. Zara made a notation. Persistent superstition despite educational advancement. Interesting. Olivia's smile faded slightly. Dr. Vex, have you considered that some myths might be based on actual encounters? Perhaps not with gods exactly, but with something unexplainable by the science of that time. All species create explanations for what they don't understand, Zara said dismissively. Humans seem particularly prone to supernatural explanations rather than seeking natural causes. Their discussion continued for another hour. When Olivia left, Zara felt satisfied she had documented another example of humanity's attachment to irrational beliefs. That evening, as Zara worked alone in the lab, the lights flickered. Her equipment registered an energy surge, then returned to normal. She looked up, annoyed at Earth's primitive power grid. A shadow moved in the corner of the room, too fluid, too purposeful to be cast by the fixed lighting. Zara froze, watching as it seemed to stretch across the wall, then vanish. "Is someone there?" she called, reaching for the communication panel. No response came, but her atmospheric sensors detected a momentary drop in temperature. On her main screen, data files began opening and closing, files containing her notes on human mythology. When Maris entered minutes later, she found Zora staring at her computer. "Everything all right?" Maris asked. "Yes," Zara said slowly. "Just a system glitch." But later, reviewing security footage, Zara found no evidence of anyone entering the lab. The cameras showed only an occasional visual distortion, like a shadow without a source, moving where shadows shouldn't be. The silver spacecraft descended through Earth's atmosphere with barely a whisper. Inside, Zara Vex adjusted her breathing apparatus and reviewed her notes one final time. As the leading cynoanthropologist of the Arcturus Collective, she had studied 17 different species across the galaxy. Humans would be her 18th. "Preparing for landing," announced the ship's eye. Earth Diplomatic Reception Committee awaiting arrival. Zora's four-fingered hand brushed across her data tablet. Her violet eyes scanned the information about human customs and social protocols. She found their traditions primitive, but was determined to maintain scientific objectivity. At least, that's what she told her superiors. "Remember," said Commander Lorix from the pilot's seat, "these humans are a newly spacefaring species. They're sensitive about their place in the galactic community." Zara couldn't hold back a small chirping sound, her species' equivalent of a scoff. They've barely left their solar system. Their greatest achievement was reaching their own moon, which they then abandoned for 50 years. "Still," Lorix cautioned, "diplomatic relations require respect." "I respect facts," Zara replied. "And the fact is that human civilization is built on superstition and myth. Did you read my pre-mission analysis? Their ancient cultures invented thousands of gods and monsters to explain simple natural phenomena." The ship touched down on the landing pad in Washington, D.C. Through the view screen, Zara saw the human delegation waiting. They wore formal attire, suits and dresses that seemed impractical in the summer heat. The diplomatic team disembarked. Zara's 3 hearts beat slightly faster in Earth's gravity, which was heavier than her homeworld. The air smelled different too, rich with oxygen and plant life. A human woman stepped forward. "Welcome to Earth. I'm Linda Carter, Secretary of State. On behalf of the United States and all nations of Earth, we welcome the Arcturus Collective." The formal greetings proceeded as planned. Zara observed the humans with clinical interest. Their faces were so expressive, their gestures so dramatic. Everything about them seemed designed for emotional display rather than efficiency. At the reception that followed, Zara found herself separated from her team. She stood by a table of human food, scanning it with her analyzer to determine what might be safe for her biology. "The little sandwiches are safe for your digestive system," said a male voice beside her. "The drinks, though, I'd avoid those." Zara turned to see a human man. He was average height for his species, with brown hair and eyes. Nothing remarkable distinguished him from the others, except perhaps his calm demeanor amid the excitement of the event. "Jack Monroe," he said, extending his hand in the human greeting custom. "State Department liaison, assigned to your research team." Zara reluctantly touched his hand in the brief contact humans called a handshake. "I've read your published work on comparative mythology," Jack continued. "Fascinating perspective." "You've read my work." Zara was surprised. Her papers weren't intended for human audiences. "Part of my job." His smile seemed genuine. "Your theory that mythological structures reveal evolutionary psychology is particularly interesting." "Human myths are especially primitive," Zara said, watching for his reaction. "Your species created elaborate stories about gods walking among you, monsters in the darkness, and heroes with impossible powers. And that seems foolish to you?" Jack asked, his expression unreadable. "It seems predictable. Every developing species creates myths before they develop science. Yours just created more than most." Jack took a sip from his glass. "Maybe we had more to explain. Or less rational minds to explain it," Zara countered. To her surprise, Jack laughed softly. "Perhaps, or perhaps there's something about Earth that inspired all those stories." "Primitive psychology inspired those stories," Zara said firmly. Jack's smile remained, but something in his eyes changed, a depth that hadn't been there before. "Well, Dr. Vex, you'll have plenty of time to study our primitive myths during your stay. I look forward to hearing your conclusions when your research is complete." He walked away, disappearing into the crowd of humans and aliens. Zara watched him go, annoyed by his amusement at her scientific assessment. She didn't come to Earth to have her expertise questioned by natives who still clung to their superstitions. Little did she know that Jack Monroe was already fading into the shadows, literally, his form becoming indistinct as he passed behind a column, emerging somehow changed on the other side.